Hi villaging friends, and welcome to my channel. With my Halloween display fully up and operational, I am moving at warp speed for my Holiday Hills Christmas display. It's a whole new platform and everything. But today I'm going to be talking to you about a lighted accessory for that Christmas display called Frosty's Greeting. I really like this piece. He is broken, he is missing his sign. But the bigger problem, he has an orange LED. So come with me as I reimagine this for my Holiday Hills Christmas display. Here we have my Frosty's Friendly Greeting by Lemax. This figure was introduced in 1999 and retired in 2000. Thanks to the Lemax Collection website and my own additional measurements, the approximate dimensions for this figure are 2.36 inches high by 3 inches wide and about 1.25 inches deep. This is a really fun and unique piece. I really enjoy that it has a father figure plugging in Frosty, and because of that, we're going to play to some Christmas nostalgia with some National Lampoons Shenanigans. Come join me as I reimagine this for my Holiday Hills Christmas display. Let's get started. Here is our Frosty's Friendly Greeting figure, and we can see it doesn't have its sign that's supposed to be holding up. Everything looks to be in good shape. Now looking at the Frosty figure itself, there's just a little bit of glue from what I can see around the bottom. So I'm going to heat this up with my hairdryer on high heat today and try to loosen the glue that's there. Now in my research on this particular piece, I have seen several broken pieces, primarily around the feet, and I'm going to try to avoid that today. It appears in the construction of these that not only was hot glue used, but so was a large amount of epoxy towards the front of the figure. So we're going to heat this up and make sure it's good and hot and see if we can break not only the hot glue, but the epoxy free as well. Now, it is very hot to the touch and it is moving a little bit. No, never mind. It just broke. And looking at this is the exact same problem that I've seen with the ones online. There is this huge amount of epoxy to the front. There would be no easy way to get that out. Using my hook pick tool, you can see the hot glue that's used on the back side, but this darker material in the front, that's all just like an epoxy resin. I'm just going to clean this up and work this LED out. It's just sitting in this channel with some hot glue itself. And in doing this, I broke the lead off the LED, which is perfectly fine because it's going in the trash anyway. Alright, just working that out. Need a little bit more heat to get that free. It's coming up pretty well. Yeah, that's just more epoxy. Alright, now that this is free, I'm going to heat this up a little bit more. Just to make sure I can get this good and clean, because when I put the new LED in, I'm actually going to be using a smaller LED for this project. And I want to make sure that I have all the glue free so I can set it just where I want it to get the right light distribution. After I get all this glue removed, we can move on to removing the battery pack and adding our resistor. Here we have our standard 3-volt Lemax battery pack, and I'm going to be removing this as I remove almost all battery packs from my pieces to save space within my village. So by using a pair of needle nose pliers, I'm going to loosen that retaining ring that's on the DC jack, remove that, and set it aside. With that set aside, I can use my hook pick tool to pry the backing off of the battery pack. Now normally these are glued in place, but due to the age, the glue generally fails and it comes right off just like this one. Surprisingly, this DC jack didn't have any glue around it. Normally, there is a fair amount of hot glue at the very bottom of these holding them in place. So what I'm going to be doing is basically just snipping this off. The lead has the resistor on it, that is the hot. What we have going on over here is an additional neutral that I'm snipping off of the battery pack. And then I'm going to snip off this other which is an additional hot that feeds from the battery pack, and snip off the resistor. Now, the remaining hot line that goes down to the switch will be snipped off, and I'll be attaching that to this DC jack. But with the DC jack here, I'm going to be adding in a resistor. Before we add the resistor in, let's take a quick look at our LED information and calculate for resistance. I'll be using a 3mm warm white breathing LED at 3 to 3.4 volts at 20 milliamps at 0.25 watts. Now, let's calculate for resistance. Using the original 3-volt power source and a 3-volt LED, that leaves 0 volts. I'll be using a 0.25 watt 10 ohm resistor with plus or minus 5% for this project to protect the LED. Now let's add that resistor to the positive leg. I'm going to be using my helping hand to hold the DC jack in place today while I make this solder connection. The first thing I'm going to do is take my resistor and I'm going to wrap one leg of this around the lead off of the DC jack. Then I'm just going to apply a small amount of flux and a just dab of solder. The flux makes this a very quick and painless process. Now, make sure it's nice and secure, and it is. I'm going to trim off the excess. I'm going to go ahead and place a piece of heat shrink up over the resistor. Now, I'm actually measuring right here. I'm going to cut this with a pair of dikes, the other pair off to the side, and slide it up. After the solder connection is done, I'm just going to slide that back to cover our solder point on the wire to the resistor. I'm going to be using a lighter today to strip back these wires as they are a little brittle. This piece is from 1999. Alright, just a nice twist. No stray wires. A dab of flux. And a touch of solder. For those of you who are new to soldering, I highly recommend using flux. You can solder without it, but flux just makes this so much easier and so much faster. Now that I'm pulling the heat shrink down, I have it in place and it's covering my solder point. I'll just use my lighter to secure that in place. With our resistor ready to go, now we can replace the LED. Alright, the fun part. Let's change out the LED in Frosty. I had already removed the old LED and I've applied power. I'll be making the solder connections live today as we're working in milliamps. It's not the volts that hurt you, it's the amperage, and because we're working in milliamps, there is no risk of electrocution. Using a lighter, I'm going to go ahead and strip back these wires. Again, they're from 1999, so we're going to play this nice and safe. Using my LED, I'm going to check for polarity. Outstanding. So now I know which one is hot and which one is not. Taking a quick look at the center of the Frosty, there is a channel where the original LED was. And what I've done is I've bent the leads of my new LED at a 90-degree angle so I can seat it properly. I'm going to just kind of eyeball the measurements to make this work. I'm going to go ahead and prepare a couple pieces of heat shrink to cover our solder point connections. Now the LED will eventually be secured in place with a low temp hot glue, so I don't have to worry about it moving or possibly causing a short if I make a mistake. But I always like to use a little bit of heat shrink when necessary. At a bare minimum, you really only need it to cover one leg, but I'm going to fall back on the Boy Scout motto of be prepared. And I'm going to just use heat shrink on both. After fitting the heat shrink in place, get these wires ready to go. Just a dab of flux on that. I'm actually going to try tinning these connections because this seems like a good place to just use straight up tinning and I'm not worried about the connection coming loose. So all tinning is taking a little bit of flux and applying it to the braided wire and then a little bit of solder. And that just creates a solid point on the end of the wire so nothing is loose or fraying. I'm also going to take another small piece of heat shrink and work it up the legs of the LED. Again, just added protection, more or less me being overly cautious than need be. With the leg of the LED covered in heat shrink, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping the wire around the positive connection. We'll go ahead and make that connection first. Maybe tinning this wasn't the best of ideas, but it seems like it's going to work with a little bit of fiddling. Alright, using a little bit of flux, dab solder, and this light duty solder. Connections made, and I'll cut off any excess. Now I can slide my heat shrink up. And just do one more fitment. Now I'm going to secure that in place with a lighter. With the positive side of the circuit complete, I'm going to go ahead and connect our negative leg. I'm going to work my tin connection around the cathode or leg of the LED. And our LED is working, so I will go ahead, get a little bit of flux, dab of solder, and get this connection made. And of course, I'm going to be trimming off any excess on the LED before putting the heat shrink up and securing it in place. With the heat shrink now secure, I'm going to go ahead and do one last fitment of the LED into that little channel where the original LED was. I'm actually going to position the LED in a way where it is shining not directly upwards, but towards the back of the figure at an upward angle. This will give a better light distribution, as you can see here. So that's going to be a pretty good light distribution. I'm very happy with that. Just got to tuck the wires around. There is a channel on the very bottom of Frosty where the original wires were. Now I will say Frosty is very thin, so if you're going to open the channel up, please take extreme caution. Using low temp hot glue, I'm just going to fill in around the LED and let that dry. While we're working with the hot glue, I'm going to go ahead and reattach Frosty. So I'm just going to run a bead of low temp hot glue all the way around the base and simply place Frosty over it. Now I am going to do my best to line up the crack in the front so it's not terribly noticeable. In the village, I don't really think you'll see it, but of course I will know it's there. So once I get the wires back in that little channel and everything secured, let's make Frosty a broom to hold. This Frosty is supposed to be holding a sign that says Season's Greetings. After all, this is Frosty's Friendly Greeting by Lemax. However, mine didn't come with a sign, so today I'm going to take a bit of classic Christmas nostalgia from Rankin and Bass and make a broom for Frosty to hold out of this toothpick and a couple pieces of pine straw from my yard. Cutting off the end of the toothpick, I'm going to go ahead and start snipping up the pine straw. Pine straw, of course, is going to be the broom end. I cut these relatively easily as I send them flying absolutely everywhere across my bench. And in order to secure this to the toothpick, we're just going to be using low temp hot glue, and then we're going to come back with some gold thread and wrap around the broom. Now for those of you who do Halloween villages, this is a very easy and inexpensive way to make miniature witch brooms. All I'm going to do is apply a little bit of glue to the end of our toothpick and then start attaching the pine needles. I'm just going to go around and eventually I'll just pick up the pine needles and kind of glob them on. Add a little bit more glue and go around and add more pine needles. This process is really quick, but as a safety reminder, please take caution when working with hot glue in your bare fingers so you do not burn yourself like I do. Or maybe less than I do. So this looks like a fair amount of pine needles for the broom itself, so let's go ahead and set this aside. I'm going to take some gold thread that I have, and I would be wrapping it around to hold the broom in place. There'll be no knots for this, it's just going to be simply glue and wrap. So just going around, just going to wrap this at least a dozen or so times to have a nice band of gold on it, so it looks more like a proper broom. And it's already come together nicely. A little extra glue here and you pull off. Alright. I've almost got this to my liking. Once I get to the point where I'm ready to stop, I'm going to put another dab of glue in and then just work the string around one last time and then snip it off. Before I reattach this to Frosty's hand, I am going to go ahead and snip off the other pointed end of the broom or a toothpick before I attach it. Then we can move on to our final reveal. Let's take a quick look at the before, and now, the after. I'm really happy with how this turned out, as this knocks off a couple of things for me for Christmas nostalgia. The first being the Rankin and Bass Frosty with a broom, and the other being the National Lampoons or the father figure fiddling with the blow mold, trying to get it to work. So tell me, what did you think about this project? What would you have done differently? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you like this video, like and subscribe for more. Happy holidays, and thank you for watching Frosty's Friendly Greeting by Lemax Reimagined. If you like this video, like and subscribe for more.